I bring you news stories making the rounds at this hour. The headline says 12 detained after Chinese hospital fire kills 29. United Nations says India's population to surpass China by 2030. Australian shipwreck, fishermen saved, 9 missing. And famous Irish climber dies, India missing in Nepal. And North Korea leader orders launch on spy satellite. Fire broke out in Changfeng Hospital at about 13-hour local time on Tuesday in Beijing, killing at least 29 people, most of them patients. 12 people have been arrested by police for questioning after the fire. The fire amongst the deadliest in recent years. Angry and worried relatives rushed to the hospital hours later, only learning of the fire from media reports. Several said they spent the night trying to locate loved ones. Those who were rescued have now been shifted to other hospitals for treatment. On Wednesday, speaking at a press conference, officials said a preliminary investigation indicated that sparks generated during renovation works had ignited paint stored on site. Among those detained are the director and deputy director of the hospital, as well as the head of the firm overseeing the renovation works. Footage on social media showed patients jumping out of the windows to flee as dense smoke billowed out of the building. According to reports, firefighters evacuated about 70 people and put out the flames within an hour of arriving. But relatives of those who were being treated at Changfeng were furious with the hospital management. They even said 8 hours later, hospital officials were unable to provide the names of those who had been injured or had died. Reports suggest that most patients at the hospital were elderly and some had undergone amputation surgeries, which made them less mobile. Data released by the United Nations show India is on its way to becoming the world's most populous country, overtaking China with nearly 3 million more people in the middle of this year. The demographic data released on Wednesday by the United Nations Population Fund UNFPA approximates India's population at 1.4289 billion against 1.425 billion for China. The United States as a distant third with an estimated population of 340 million. The data by the UNFPA State of World Population Report 2023 showed. The report says 8 countries will account for half the estimated growth in world population by 2050. The Democratic Republic of Congo DRC, Egypt, Ethiopia, India, Nigeria, Pakistan, the Philippines, and Tanzania. The report said the data shows information available as of February 2023. Population experts using former data from the UN have projected India will go past China this month. But the newest reports from the global body did not specify a date for when the change will take place. United Nations population officials have said it was not possible to specify a date due to uncertainty about the data coming out of India and China, especially since India's last census were conducted in 2011 and the next one due in 2021 has been delayed due to the pandemic. Although India and China will account for over 1/3 of the estimated global population of 8.04 billion, the population growth in both Asian giants has been slowing at a much faster pace in China than India. China's population last year fell for the first time in 6 decades, a historic turn that is expected to mark the beginning of a long period of decrease in its citizens' numbers with profound implications for its economy and the world. According to government data, India's annual population growth has averaged 1.2% since 2011, compared with 1.7% in the 10 years previously. Now, a group of 11 Indonesian fishermen from 2 boats that were caught in the path of Cyclone Ilsa have been rescued from a remote island off northwestern Australia after 6 days without food or water, but 9 other men are thought to have drowned at sea. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority, AMSA, which rescued the fishermen on Monday night, said the group was recuperating after being picked up from Bedwell Island, some 300 kilometers, 200 miles west of the Australian coastal tourist town of Broome. One of the boats, Express 1, ran aground with 10 men on board on April 12th, AMSA said in a statement on Wednesday. The other, Putrajaya, sank in extreme weather conditions on April 11th or 12th, the authorities said, with 9 of the crew thought to have drowned. The only known survivor from Putrajaya spent 30 hours in the water before reaching land at Bedwell, a remote, exposed and inhospitable stretch of white sand with no natural shelter of freshwater sources. The survivors, who had built a makeshift shelter with debris from their boats, were spotted on Monday by the Australian Border Force, which was on a routine area surveillance mission. A Broome-based rescue helicopter was deployed and winched all 11 on board as the lights began to fade. Gordon Watt, a manager at helicopter provider PHI Aviation, said the rescue helicopter crew had been unable to land on the sand. The survivors were taken to Broome Hospital, where authorities reported them in good health. They are expected to be flown back to Indonesia when they have recovered. A famous Irish climber has died and an Indian is missing after falling into a crevasse in two separate incidents on Mount Annapurna, the world's 10th highest mountain, an expedition organizer said. Indian climber Anurang Malu, 34, fell into a crevasse on the same mountain on Monday, and Thanes Guragai of Kathmandu-based 7 Summit Trek said on Tuesday a search is continuing for him. Another Indian climber, Baljit Kaur, fell ill on the way down from the 8,091-meter, 26,545 feet summit, but miraculously survived after spending the night in harsh conditions on the mountain. On Monday, Irish climber Noel Hanna, 56, died while returning from the summit, Guragai said. The cause of the death was not immediately known. His body was carried down the mountain and taken to Kathmandu, the capital, Guragai said. Hanna had submitted Mount Everest 10 times and climbed the highest point on all 7 continents. In 2006, he climbed the world's highest peak and then cycled from the Roots base camp to the sea in eastern India, reaching the Bay of Bengal after a marathon 2-week bike ride. Annapurna, the world's 10th highest mountain, is an avalanche-prone, technically difficult and has a higher death rate than Everest. Indian climber Kaur, 28, reached the summit on Monday but became exhausted and fell ill on the way down because she was not using any supplemental bottled oxygen, said Pasanga Sherpa of Pioneer Adventure, who outfitted the expedition and organized a rescue effort. He said she spent the night on the mountain before she was able to make contact and was rescued by a helicopter. She was taken to a hospital in Kathmandu, where she walked from the ambulance to the hospital building with the help of a nurse. The popular spring mountaineering season has just begun in the Himalayas in Nepal, and hundreds of climbers have started climbing the highest peaks. 3 Sherpa guides have been missing since last week when they fell into a crevasse on a treacherous section of Mount Everest just above base camp on the world's highest mountain. The crevasse is estimated to about 50 meters, 160 feet deep. The trio was crossing the treacherous Khumbu icefall last Wednesday as part of a supply mission when a block of glacier ice fell and swept them into the deep crevasse. Nepal is home to 8 of the world's 10 highest peaks and welcomes hundreds of adventurers each spring climbing season when temperatures are warm and winds are typically calm. The government has issued more than 700 climbing permits for various Himalayan mountains this season, including 319 for Mount Everest. Still going forward, according to report, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has said his country has completed the development of its first military spy satellite and ordered officials to proceed with a planned launch. Kim, who was visiting the country's National Aerospace Development Administration, said developing reconnaissance capabilities was a priority to counter threats from the United States and South Korea, and that several satellites were necessary to firmly establish an intelligence gathering capability, report said on Wednesday. Kim urged the deployment of the satellites as scheduled but did not elaborate on the launch date. In December, North Korea conducted what it called an important final phase test for a spy satellite and said it would finish preparations for the launch by April. Securing real-time information about the hostile forces' military scenario is the most important task, Kim said. Kim also accused the U.S. and South Korea of expanding hostile military campaigns in the name of strengthening their alliance and claimed the U.S. was trying to turn South Korea into an advanced base for aggression and an arsenal for war by deploying military assets like aircraft carriers and nuclear-capable bombers in the region. The U.S. and South Korean militaries have been expanding their combined exercises to beef up their deterrence against North Korea's growing nuclear threats. This week, they launched a 12-day aerial exercise involving some 110 warplanes and staged a one-day naval missile defense exercise within Japan. Kim accused the U.S. of trying to turn South Korea into an advanced base for aggression and an arsenal for war by deploying military assets like aircraft, carriers, and nuclear-capable bombers in the region. More Story says Russia-Ukraine war, Lula denounced the violation of Ukraine's territory after criticism. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has denounced the violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity after facing criticism for remarks he made over the weekend about Russia's invasion of the country. The left-wing leader, however, did double down on his call for mediation in the conflict, which began in February 2022. While my government condemns the violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity, we advocate a negotiated political solution to the conflict, Lula said in a speech following his meeting with Romanian President Claus Iohannis. The Brazilian leader explained that he expressed concern to Iohannis over the global consequences of the war in terms of food and energy security, especially in the poorest regions of the planet. Brazil has positioned itself as an advocate for peace amidst the war in Ukraine, which has injured or killed as many as 22,209 civilians by March 20th. The United Nations has confirmed, though it notes the real number may be considerably higher. But over the weekend, Lula inflamed international relations with remarks that appeared to blame Ukraine for its part in the war, saying it was caused by decisions made by two countries. He also criticized the United States and Europe for contributing to the hostilities by supplying Ukraine with weapons. Lula explained that he hoped to build a group of countries that have nothing to do with war, that don't want war, to lead negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. The Brazilian president's comments, followed by a visit on Monday from Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, led to an outcry from Ukraine, the U.S., and other allies. In a Facebook post on Tuesday, Oleg Nikolenko, a spokesperson for the Ukraine's foreign ministry, called on Lula to visit the war-torn country to understand the real causes and essence of Russian aggression and its consequences for global security. Ukraine is watching with interest the efforts of the president of Brazil to find a solution to end the war, Nikolenko wrote. At the same time, an approach that puts the victim and the aggressor on the same scale does not correspond to the real state of affairs. In a press briefing later in the day, the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden likewise rejected Lula's remarks, echoing earlier criticism from U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby that Brazil was parroting Russian propaganda. In Africa, hospitals in Khartoum shut due to ongoing crisis. Khartoum's hospitals have been thrown into chaos by the explosion of violence between Sudan's two top generals. People have been unable to leave their homes since Saturday as the two sides engaged in gun battles and bombarded each other with artillery and airstrikes. More than 185 people have been killed and over 1,800 wounded since the fighting erupted, according to United Nations figures. At the Ahmed Qasim Children's Hospital, medical staff had to evacuate all cases except the ones in the intensive care unit. Supplies were rolling low, with doctors, nurses, patients and their relatives trapped inside for days as the Sudanese capital turned into a war zone. There are some 20 hospitals in the capital and the neighboring city of Omdurman. Those that still managed to operate were understaffed and overwhelmed, running low on supplies and struggling with power or water courts, doctors said. The sudden outbreak of fighting caught everyone off guard, trapping doctors and nurses inside hospitals and preventing other staff from reaching the facilities. The World Health Organization said many hospitals in Khartoum reported shortages of blood transfusion equipment, intravenous fluids, medical supplies, and other life-saving commodities. Along with Ahmed Qasim Children's Hospital, the Al-Shabaab Teaching Hospital shut down Monday after a ward was struck in fighting, said the general manager Al-Namir Gibril Ibrahim. Let's take this short break. I'll bring you more stories when I come back. You're welcome back. We begin with elections in Nigeria. Fintiri declared winner on governorship poll after chaos. On Tuesday, the returning officer for the Adamawa State governorship election, Professor Mohammed Mele, declared Governor Amadou Fintiri the winner of the state governorship poll. Fintiri secured a second term in office, having scored 430,861 votes to be the rival of All Progressives Congress candidate Aishatu Dahiru, popularly known as Binani, who amassed 398,788 votes. Also on Tuesday, the Independent National Electoral Commission said it has asked the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, to draw the attention of the appointing authority to the behavior of the state Resident Electoral Commissioner Hudu Yunusa Ari. Fintiri's victory took place 48 hours after Binani was controversially declared the governor-elect by Yunusa Ari. Binani was trailing Fintiri by over 31,000 votes in the first round of the election held on March 18th. The electoral agency had declared the exercise inconclusive because the margin of lead did not exceed the number of cancelled votes in 69 polling units with 37,016 voters. The collation of results of the April 15 supplementary election was ongoing when the REC took over the duty of the returning officer and announced the APC candidate as the winner, sparking an uproar. In response, INEC promptly declared his action null and void and also summoned the REC and his colleagues in the Adamawa State Office to Abuja. The Commission, in a letter by the Secretary to the Commission, Rose Orarian Anthony, further barred Yunusa Aru from coming to the office and directed the Administrative Secretary to take charge of the INEC office in the state. Merely at the resumed collation of the results on Tuesday, pronounced Fintiri as the election winner to a wild jubilation by the anxious residents of the state. The event was witnessed by the INEC National Commissioner and Chairman of the Information and Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye. Merely at the resumed collation of the results, announced Fintiri as the election winner. Announcing the winner, the returning officer said Amadou Fintiri have satisfied the requirement of the law and is hereby returned duly re-elected. The total number of registered voters was 2,196,566, while the accredited voters were put at 876,387. The returning officer said the valid votes were 853,819, rejected votes were 15,287, and the total votes cast were 869,106. Acting Chair Apapa suspended 5 others. Yesterday's suspension of Labour Party's LP Acting National Chairman Lamidi Apapa and 5 other national officers has worsened the crisis rocking the party. Others suspended are Haji Saleh Lawal, Deputy Secretary, Roland Daramola, Financial Secretary, Prince Ruben Favor, Vice Chairman, South-South, Samuel Akimbade, Legal Advisor, and Mohammed Al-Khali, Vice Chairman, North-East. They were sanctioned by the party's National Executive Council, NEC, for alleged anti-party activities. The NEC also upheld the decision of the Akure Convention, which expelled the National Publicity Secretary, Abayomi Arabambi. On April 6, Apapa and 5 others took over the affairs of the party following the ruling of a federal high court which barred Julius Abure from parading himself as chairman of the party. The court also restrained 3 others from functioning. Acting on the order, Apapa, who doubles as the vice chairman South, took over the party pending the vacation of the court's order. But the NEC, during a meeting in Asaba, Delta State, announced the suspension of Apapa and his acting executive council. It passed a vote of confidence on the Abure-led NWC at the meeting. At yesterday's NEC meeting, where state chairman, state secretaries, presidential candidates of the party, Peter Obi, National Assembly members-elect, Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, were all present. The NEC also extended the tenure of the present NWC of the party by 1 year. And finally, on the news, court voided the sack of Ararume as NNPC board chair. The Abuja division of the Federal High Court has nullified the removal and sack of Senator Ifeanyi Ararume as non-executive chairman of the Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, by President Muhammadu Buhari, describing it as arbitrary, unlawful and illegal. Yesterday, in his judgment, Justice Inyang Ekwo set aside the removal of Ararume on January 17, 2023, and awarded 5 billion naira against Buhari and NNPCL to be paid to Ararume as damages for the wrongful sack and disruption of his appointment. Justice Ekwo ordered that Ararume be immediately restored to office as non-executive chairman of the NNPCL. The judge also declared as null and void all decisions of the board of directors of NNPCL carried out in the absence of Ararume. Justice Ekwo held that Buhari acted ultra-vires, wrongful, illegal, null and void in the ways and manners he was sacked after using his name to register NNPCL, and that such a brazen act cannot stand in the face of the law. The judge agreed that under Section 63 of the CAMA, the president is vested with powers to remove directors of the organization, but held that powers were not at large. The judge said the law clearly stipulated conditions under which directors of the NNPCL can be sacked, adding that a breach of the stipulated conditions would automatically make any purported sack unlawful. In the instant case, Justice Ekwo said the federal government letter of January 17, 2022, signed by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, SGF, did not give any reason for the removal of the plaintiff from being inaugurated along with other directors. The court said the issue of contract fraud raised in the progresses filed by the NNPCL cast doubt on the character, integrity and reputation of Ararume, where afterthought as such facts were not adduced in the letter that removed him from being inaugurated. To worsen the situation, Justice Ekwo said the NNPCL claimed to have obtained the alleged contract fraud against Ararume from online media, adding that no probate value can be attached to such information by any court. The judge said even if the allegations were to be made in the proper way, the plaintiff must be confronted with the same and be allowed to defend himself as required by law, adding that anything short of that will amount to denial of fair hearing, which he said was against the natural justice. In the judgment, the judge restrained Buhari from removing the plaintiff as a director of the NNPCL, and that his name must also not be removed as non-executive chairman of the organization. To refresh our memories, 12 detained after Chinese hospital fire kills 29. United Nations says India's population to surpass China by 2023. Australia shipwreck, fishermen saved, 9 missing. Famous Irish climber dies, Indian missing in Nepal. And North Korean leader orders launch on spy satellite. Thanks for watching. I'm Lestueki.